What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson, and the Giants are back on the practice field these past couple of days. Today, the media was in attendance for this OTA practice, so we do have some takeaways. The Giants, somebody a little bit banged up, a legendary NFL wide receiver there to coach the wide receivers, which is really exciting, Steve Smith Sr. Now, I just want to get in my 2 cents on that before we really dive into the discussion. That's so cool because Steve Smith Sr., you remember watching him play. If you turn on some Malik Neighbors film at LSU, very similar playing style. And if you've been keeping up with Steve Smith Sr. and the kind of media analyst career that he's had, all throughout this offseason, he was dropping scouting reports on the top wide receiver prospects in this draft class. He had a lot of great things to say about Malik Neighbors. And like I said, you could see the similarities in their playing styles. So the fact that Steve Smith Sr. is there coaching up Malik Neighbors, that is so exciting to me. So that's one of the takeaways and many more from the latest OTA practices for the New York Giants. Darius Slayton is back, and we will dive into that as well. But before we dive into all of our takeaways, make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And what is your top takeaway from the latest OTA practices for the New York Giants?
I'm doing pretty good. Giants underway. We're seeing Daniel Jones throw the football a little bit. Drew Lock and obviously Tommy DeVito. Guys are getting involved. Even Steve Smith was there today. Pretty big takeaway, actually. Steve Smith doing some, I guess, informal help in some of these practices. He was working with Jalen Hyatt pretty closely, probably on his release package a little bit. And then, of course, you had Malik Neighbors watching along too. And it's crazy. Like, you look at Malik Neighbors, when you watch him play, he looks like this skinny dude, but this guy's kind of built. Like, if you actually see his frame from the side, he is built. Like, he's got some strength to him, some physicality. And he's 20 years old, right? So he's not even fully grown just yet. And that's really exciting, man. I mean, you see Neighbors, the second he catches the football, his instantaneous reactions to turn up field and find ways to get extra yardage. That's going to be a pivotal kind of point in the Giants passing game, is getting him into space and letting him operate after the catch. You're kind of seeing them work that into some of the film that we have seen, some of the clips that we've seen. But looking at Steve Smith helping out some of these guys, always a good player or former player rather, to get some information from and learn. So I think that was a really, really good little point there. Obviously, Darius Slayton is back at practices. He wanted a new extension, right? He wanted a new deal. And by the way, Anthony, I think this is worth discussing. This doesn't bode well for Slayton staying with the Giants after this season. In fact, I think it basically rules it out. Why? Well, if the Giants wanted to keep him, they would have extended him. Clearly, they want his contract to expire. They did not give him an extension. They could have gave him like a 2-year, 3-year extension at like $12 million per season, $12 million. And clearly, they were like, nope, we're actually instead only going to give you a $650,000 incentive. So he's making next to nothing this year, like $5-6 million cap hit, or at least on average, the 2-year, $12 million deal he did sign. And he's only getting $650K in incentives. And you could argue that Slayton's better or equivalent to Gabe Davis, who's getting $13 million per season. So, what do you think about this? This doesn't bode well for him, in my opinion. I think this probably means we're moving off of him after this year. Or they could end up trading him at the deadline if he does have value to a team that may need someone like him, which a lot of teams usually do. A team like the Chiefs, the Bills, playoff contending squads that need to supplement an injury. He could be a valuable piece. You could maybe get a 3rd-round pick for him, 4th-round pick for him at the deadline. Maybe that is some sort of value. What are you thinking about that?
Yeah, so it is really unfortunate that the Giants were not able to extend Slayton. I think that they should. I think Slayton is a great New York Giant. He's a class act. He really represents what it means to be a Giants football player very well. Great human being, plus super consistent, dependable, reliable player. Year in, year out, putting up 700-plus receiving yards minus that one blip in a disastrous 2021 season. But Slayton's been a consistent performer, and he's been a high-level performer, and I do think he's a guy that the Giants should want around long-term as their WR2. However, you do have to kind of take realization of the fact that Jalen Hyatt is pretty much waiting to take Darius Slayton's job as that number 2 outside receiver. Right now, the number 1, Malik Neighbors, it's going to be that way for a long time. Number 2, for now, Darius Slayton. But like you said, that could probably change by the end of the season, and then that's when Jalen Hyatt steps into that number 2 receiver role, and of course, in the slot, you have Wan'Dale Robinson. Right now, how much playing time is Hyatt able to get with Darius Slayton in the starting lineup? That remains to be seen. I'm sure injuries will occur, so Hyatt will get his playing time, plus he's a good, talented young player, so he'll get playing time regardless. But I have to imagine that the Giants are thinking, we didn't draft this kid Hyatt in the 3rd round, trade up for him just for him to be a 4th-string receiver on this team. We want him in the starting lineup long term, whether that's this season or next season and so on. And Darius Slayton is that major roadblock in front of Jalen Hyatt from taking on that larger role. So for the Giants, what they're probably thinking is, we'll play out this year with Slayton, maybe trade him at the deadline like you mentioned, Alex, and then we'll go ahead and promote Jalen Hyatt into that role and see if he can take it and really develop his game. So that's probably the long-term plan here. One more year of Slayton, though. Slayton, like I said, a very good number 2 receiver. I think he could have been a 1,000-yard receiver by now if he had different circumstances around him in the early portion of his career, and he's made some really high-level plays, so I'm happy that they were able to come to some sort of an agreement on these incentives. I think he gets an extra $650,000 potentially in incentives, so it's great for Slayton. I think that he's going to hit a lot of them because he every year is hitting a lot of incentives and playing at a really high level. So I'm happy about that. But, you know, it sucks that this is probably the writing on the wall for his eventual departure. But like you said, trading him at the deadline for a draft pick, not a bad idea. I think one team that I will throw out there, mentioned this on an episode of Big Apple Blitz, the New York Jets, makes a lot of sense midway through the season. You know, it makes sense for both teams because Giants don't have to pay for the travels and the moving expenses for Darius Slayton. They tell him just go walk to the other side of the stadium and there's your new home. And then he plays for the Jets, who do have a little bit of a problem now with Allen Lazard. So we'll see if they're in the playoff hunt midway through the season. If the Giants are, you know, with a bad record and they're trying to offload some of their talent like they did with Leonard Williams last year, I think you can go ahead and see Darius Slayton potentially get moved at the deadline, like you said, Alex. But there was another kind of news regarding a wide receiver today, Alex, wide receiver / special teamer. Gunnar Olszewski went down with some sort of an injury. How are you feeling about that, Alex? What are your thoughts on Gunnar going down with an injury?
Well, Giants season has officially started, my friends. Our first injury of the year. Dude slipped on grass. It's ridiculous, man. I mean, like, what more can you do than just freaking laugh? The guy slipped running a route and limped off the field. Well, a good thing we have Tyrone Tracy because I'm looking forward to him returning punts and kickoffs long term. But no, I hope Gunnar Olszewski's okay. Obviously, it was really solid for us last year. Good player, you know, really, really decent kick returner. So hopefully he's okay. You know, they signed him to a little bit of, I think, a 1-year extension. So definitely he's in their plans. But never want to see that happening early in the season. Looked like he limped off the field, so it wasn't like anything serious, probably just like twisted an ankle or something like that. Hopefully it's nothing crazy and he comes back within a couple of weeks. But first injury of the offseason and basically has happened with nothing going on. So that is Giants football for you. It always happens, like, just ridiculous scenarios like that. But, you know, this OTA period is interesting, right? Because they're not doing much. It's just kind of like going through the motions. You know, Daniel Jones getting some work in with some of the receivers. I know Drew Lock said today, made it blatantly clear, I am Daniel Jones' backup. I am here to help Daniel, right? So, like, he knows, like, his job is the backup. He's not starting. Could that be a facade? Sure. Could it be a mirage? Yes. Don't think so. I think Daniel Jones is starting this year. I think the Giants are committing to him. I think they're saying to themselves, you know, screw it with the injury clause. They don't care about it. They're going to play him anyway. If they end up getting bit in the butt by that, we're going to have a lot to say about it a year from now. But you can't go into, and look, the reason that I can sit here and tell you, right, that the Giants are going to start Daniel Jones is because I'm pretty sure Joe Shane said something pretty much verbatim to this. You can't go into the season expecting injuries. You know what I mean? Football, there's injuries. They happen. The injury clause in Daniel Jones' contract, if he gives them the best chance to win football games, which he probably does based on the talent that we have at quarterback, you know, you have to play him. You know, the Giants, Joe Shane, Brian Dable, their jobs are, you know, closer to the line. They're on the hot. The seat's hotter than it's ever been. They need to win football games. They got to produce. If Daniel Jones gives them the best chance of winning football games, they have to play him. You know what I mean? They have to try to win these games. So I get it. I understand it. You know, we'll see what happens long term, obviously. But, you know, there was a couple of scenarios today where Daniel Jones was, man, it was slow. It was really, there was one clip I saw where he held the ball for what felt like 7-8 seconds. In an NFL game, he's dead, right? He's a part of the turf. He is a dust bunny. I don't know if that drill was meant to just wait for as long as possible to get rid of the football. If I'm Brian Dable and Anthony, you tell me if I'm wrong here. If I'm Brian Dable, I'm telling Daniel Jones, now is the time to just throw it up. Give your guy a 50-50 shot. Be aggressive. throw the ball. Don't wait 20 seconds to throw it to Allen Robinson on an underneath route when there's 2 guys in coverage next to him. You know what I mean? Like, just take the shots. Like, who cares? It's practice. Sling the rock. Give your guy a chance. Maybe I'm wrong. We've seen him do it in the past. Maybe he's just working things back. It could be just next to nothing in terms of, you know, what they were trying to do. I don't know what play they were trying to do. I don't know what the exact thing was. But, you know, if I were Brian Daboll, I would be like, just throw it up to him. Like, give your guys a chance right now. It doesn't matter. It's just practice. You know, waiting 10 seconds doesn't really do you any favors. But, you know, again, I don't know what was going on, so I can't say for sure that was, you know, I'm just kind of speaking out of my ass right now.
Yeah, I'll say that I do disagree with you because I don't think now is the time to just throw it up. That's for training camp when the pads are on. Right now in 7-on-7s, no pads on. You're not throwing jump balls, 50-50 balls, because you don't want anybody falling down and fracturing an arm or landing awkwardly on their shoulder or dislocating something or jumping and making a weird cut. We've seen players jump and all of a sudden something pops and they're done. So now isn't the time for Daniel Jones to throw those 50-50 balls. Once we get to training camp, yes, that's when you want to make sure that you give opportunities for your guys to make plays. But right now it's about running these drills and standing in the pocket and simulating going through your throwing motion. And I think that's probably what we are seeing on that one clip that you're referencing. Daniel Jones making sure that his fundamentals are down pat, making sure that he's throwing the ball with accuracy, not necessarily timing, because again, that video, he was holding on to the ball for a very long time, but he's probably just making sure that his mechanics are down. Remember, he is kind of working his way from the bottom up all over again with that torn ACL. Has to get his footwork back in shape, his base, his core, all that stuff has to be back in tip-top shape like it used to be. So he's probably just going through his throwing motions, not necessarily trying to make plays in 7-on-7s. It's really just about getting your mechanics down and fixing the fundamentals. So I do disagree to an extent, but you are right in the sense that there needs to be a good internal clock with Daniel Jones. If they are doing 7-on-7s and they do have a simulated pass rush, obviously he won't get hit, but he does need to get the ball out as soon as he can. However, you will often see touchdowns that take place during even training camp where the defense says, nope, count that as a sack, but you'll see the video highlight reel of a deep touchdown pass. 5 seconds in the pocket, doesn't matter. Both teams are playing, but they still play through the whistle and through the pass on those downs. So that's kind of how those NFL practices work. And so furthermore, I do want to mention something that I saw today. I thought this was a really exciting quote, Alex, and I think you'll like this one, from Brandon Brown, assistant GM of the Giants. He said that Malik Nabers has aura, and I agree, and I'm excited about that. Malik Nabers, he called him a dog. He said he has moxie and he has aura, and I think that's a lot of fun. But I do actually want to bring up something from Carmen Bricolo. As a matter of fact, he was discussing Evan Neal today, talking about how the offensive line is a position that's developmental, you know, and you can't judge these players based on the way that they played while they were injured or while they were still young. You have to just develop them and give them time to grow. And I'm curious, Alex, how you feel about that quote from Carmen Bricolo. I know that you're confident in Bricolo, so am I, but how are you feeling about this quote where he's kind of saying, like, I have an open mind with Evan Neal, and I'm thinking that he could step in there and he could still do the job that we expect him to do, and we're going to give him time to grow and develop.
Yeah, I mean, look, like you said, he kind of said you can't judge a player when he's injured, and you can't judge a player, you know, when you're young. And Evan Neal's both injured and young. The question is, can he turn back the clock and now erase 2 years of bad habits, right? That's kind of what I am looking at right now and saying to myself, well, you know, the Giants brought in Carmen Bricolo. I like him a lot. I think he's a good coach. It took Daniel Jones about a year to get rid of all the bad habits that, you know, he developed over the course of 3-4 years and still hasn't gotten rid of some of them. So, you know, you're looking at the pocket presence. You know, obviously there's a lot of things to his game that improved when Brian Daboll came here in the first year, but is that going to be the same impact on Evan Neal? I still think that Evan Neal, when it comes to him, he's got to earn that job. He's going to win that job outright, and he has a long way to go before we can sit here and confidently say he's our right tackle. But no, I'm not like, look, let the best man win. If Evan Neal bounces back and has a great year and takes that big step forward, all the best to him. Like, that's exactly what everybody wants. The problem is, nobody believes it yet. Nobody thinks it's going to happen until he actually does it. I'm not sitting here. I know there's like every now and then we talk about Evan Neal. Someone in the comments probably writing right now is like, when Evan Neal turns it back, like, you better be on that side of the fence. Bro, let me just make it very clear to you. We want every Giant to succeed, but he's been horrible for 2 years and called us sheep and actively took a shot at fans when he's the one performing poorly. That's not on us. You know what I mean? That's not our fault. You know, that's the coaching fault. That's injury probability. That's so many other things. We want him to succeed, but there is no reason that the Giants should be handing out starting jobs with no competition anymore, which is why they brought in Jermaine Illuminor. If Evan Neal beats out Jermaine Illuminor, that's a great thing, because that means he stepped up big time and he got better. But right now, Jermaine Illuminor is my starting right tackle. Why? Because he's better than Evan Neal. Evan Neal has to prove it. I'm tired of handing out jobs to people that have not earned it. Yes, it's year 3. For Evan Neal. If it was last year and I stood by last year saying, yeah, I have confidence in him, I think he'll turn it around, and he did not do it. Now you've lost the faith from us. You've lost that optimism. Now you actually have to prove it. And I think that's a completely fair take, by the way. I don't think it's crazy to say, yeah, you've stunk for 2 years, you've been injury prone. Prove to us that you can stay healthy and play better. Like, is that crazy to say for a guy that's making millions of dollars every year playing freaking football? Like, that's not crazy at all. And I think that the fact they brought in Jermaine Illuminor is a test to that exact logic, that they want him to step up and beat a proven veteran who's a slightly above average player. So I think that's really what's going to happen. He's going to have to step up. He's going to have to play better, perform better, and grow and develop and stay healthy. And those are all things that will hopefully attribute to a much better offensive line next season. But, you know, I hope to God he pans out, because we drafted him to be a great player, to be a linchpin piece on this offensive line, and he hasn't been. But he still has time. The Giants are giving him another opportunity, year 3, probably next year too, to find his groove. We've seen guys step up. Austin Jackson with Miami a couple years back is one that stands out to me. Eric Flowers even becoming a competent guard is another kind of example of that. So yeah, you know, right now I like Carmen Brasillo. I think he's a good coach. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He knows what to do. He's managed to maximize value where there was none on that Raiders offensive line. And I think that we have a lot more talent than that. And if we stay healthy, I think this team will get better in the trenches.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. I think that Carmen Brasillo has a great track record of developing unproven talent, and Evan Neal right now is an unproven talent. We do need to see him take that step forward, and I've said this before, I think that him taking that step forward is the X factor for this team and for this offense. If Evan Neal plays at a high level, if he actually does become even an average right tackle, that allows Jon Runyan to play his natural position of left guard. That allows Jermaine Illuminor to play right guard where he's played well before. That solidifies the starting 5 of the offensive line in a much better fashion than moving Jon Runyan out of position to right guard and Jermaine Illuminor out of position to left guard, which is what the Giants have been toying with at OTAs right now. It's really all just dependent on whether or not Evan Neal plays well. And if he does, this offensive line will be so much better off because of that, and so will this entire offense and team. So a lot rests on the shoulders of Evan Neal, and if he's able to just play at an average level, I think that's a win, and I think we could be really happy about that. But, Alex, any other major takeaways from OTAs? Again, just these spring practices, they're running around in shorts and t-shirts, so nothing too serious that we're going to see at any of these practices, but any other major takeaways that you have from the last 2 days of OTAs?
Nothing major, man. I mean, like, the Giants are going through the motions. It's pretty, like, quiet. They're just, you know, bringing some guys in to help. You know, I loved Kayvon Thibodeau's quotes talking about how he wants to beat Michael Strahan's record. I think this team wants to be great. I think they want to be a lot better than they have been. I think they will be better. But they need to be a team. You know what I mean? Like, we've seen a lot of individual performances, but nothing like, oh, wow, like, that unit was tremendous. Like, that group was great. It's been Dexter Lawrence has been phenomenal. You know, Kayvon's been inconsistent. Adoree Jackson was bad. Deontay Banks had growing pains. You know, Bobby Okereke was great. McFadden missed tackles. You know, it has to be a collective effort. You can't win football games as an individual. You know what I mean? You got to play as a team. You got to be disciplined as a team. That's more so what I'm looking most to seeing this season is like, can these guys stay disciplined, do their jobs individually? Because if you do your job at a high level individually, you're doing your job high level as a team. But if you have a bunch of pieces all performing at different levels, you're gonna be bad. Like, you can't compensate sometimes for bad performance. So that's kind of what I'm looking to see the Giants step up and just be more consistent across the board.
I'm 100% with you on that. Consistency is key, and the New York Giants have been anything but consistent in recent years. I mean, you could say they've been consistently bad, other than that one year that they had where they did make it to the playoffs and win a game. But yeah, been tough seasons for the Giants. But hey, a lot of the work that you see in the regular season is actually begun in OTAs. They're installing the offense right now. Brian Daboll calling some plays. I thought that was exciting. That would be the last takeaway that I do want to point out. He was calling plays during practice the past couple of days. We'll see if he continues to call plays throughout training camp and into the regular season. I sure hope so, because I think that Brian Daboll would be the best play caller for this team over Mike Kafka, but who knows what they ultimately decide to do. It'll be exciting to see, and of course, anything regarding Daboll and the plays that he may or may not call, we will update you on right here on Fireside Giants. So make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell so don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening to Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, we'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.
Perfect.